welcome to Netflix and Phil. I have a special guest, and not even a guest, he's a friend. His name is Scott, who I met many years ago here in Las Vegas. We'll get into his history. I just want to welcome you and thank you so much, Scott, for being with me today. So let's give it up for Scott Speiser, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Phil, thanks for having me. I can officially say it's the first time I've ever been in your bedroom. Let's not make it the last.
I agree.
Great.
I am so excited to talk to you because I think the last time I approached you, I had solicited a cameo for a mutual friend that we have.
Did for Mark Roberts, I believe, right?
Yes, and Mark Roberts, who you know from your Blue Man Group days, I take
Correct.
it.
Yep.
We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about improv. We're going to talk about your career history and trajectory today.
Great.
So I might as well start with my first question. So you were sharing earlier about before I hit record where you've lived. Tell me about your upbringing and your start in life, Scott Speiser.
Oh, okay. Well, I was born in Lumberton, North Carolina. It's about this big. And then let's see, I moved to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Then I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Then Minneapolis, Minnesota. Then San Luis Obispo, California. Then Greensboro, North Carolina. Fayetteville, North Carolina. Chapel Hill, North Carolina again. Graduated high school there. Went to college in Chicago or Evanston, Illinois. Then moved to LA. Then to New York, Toronto, Vegas, New York, back to LA. That's it. It was great being here. Thanks for having me, Phil.
Yeah, this was great. I will see you next time.
Great. We moved around a lot growing up. I had a stepdad for a while. He was a doctor doing his fellowship and residency in different places. And then if they didn't like a place after a little while, we just kind of moved.
That's great. And that's several places. I mean,
it's a lot.
You named a number of them. I guess my question is, eventually Vegas happened, and I guess that's kind of when we crossed paths. You mentioned LA before that. I think what I'm trying to transition to here is somewhere along the line, you discovered improv, and was it prior to Vegas or before?
Yeah, I did improv in high school, actually. There was an improv group at my school, Chapel Hill High School, in North Carolina. And I got into that group. I went to a summer session at North Carolina School of the Arts, I think after 9th grade. Did some improv there. And then 11th grade, maybe joined an improv group at school. So I did that there. I did it all throughout college. And then after college, I moved to LA, did it all in LA out here at Groundlings and other places, Improv Olympic. And so when I got to Vegas, I was in Vegas doing Blue Man Group, but also wanted to keep doing improv. And so that's when our paths crossed in the Second City School out there.
That is when I met you. And I don't know that I've ever shared, but I'm also a Groundlings. Well, you were on a main stage with Groundlings, correct?
Not the main stage. I was on the Sunday company.
Still.
Yeah. I mean, people can be impressed if they want.
I am.
Yeah. So I did Sunday company, and then I kind of left towards the end of the Sunday company to go do Blue Man Group.
Speaking of the Blue Man Group, which embarrassingly is a show that I have personally never seen.
You've never seen? You never saw it when I lived there?
Mm-mm.
Phil.
Not to this day, and I'm terribly embarrassed. So walk us through how you got into it. What was the audition process like? Because I understand it's intense.
Yeah.
And then once in, you mentioned it took you quite a few places. So I had actually, in middle school and high school, I was obsessed with musical theater. I just loved music. I knew them all. I had soundtracks. I just was obsessed. And I would go on some trips, either with my mom or like friends to New York, and go see a bunch of shows. And every time I went to New York, I kept seeing ads for this weird thing called Blue Man Group, and I had no idea what it was. But just on the little picture of these 3 guys with like weird tubes and colors, I was like, something looks interesting about that. So I went and saw it. I think New Year's Eve, like 1995 or something like that. Okay.
And I remember watching it and being like, I don't know what the hell I just saw, but that looked really fun, and I'd love to do that one day.
Okay.
So went to college, didn't really think much about it. Saw that I think Blue Man Group opened in Chicago while I was in college, and then majored in theater, did a lot of improv in college, moved out to LA, and was like, oh yeah, that Blue Man Group thing I saw. So I looked it up online, submitted myself online for an audition, and I think my first audition was like the end of the year 2000 or something like that, right? Maybe early 2001. And like you go in at that, it's all different now, but at that time you went in and, you know, the Blue Men don't talk. So there's a lot of just acting with your eyes and your breath. All right. Right. So there's a lot of exercises like that. And then they called me back for like the next day and did some drumming because there's a lot of percussion. I'm not a drummer. I had rhythm, but I'm not a drummer. So that was it. And I didn't hear anything. That was the end of that. Then like, I'm going to get the timeline wrong, but like 8 months later, they were in town again. And I was like, you know, can I audition again? Like, yeah, come in. So audition again, same kind of thing. Got called back the next day, but then that was it. Then I'm talking like a year or two later, we're probably pushing 2003 or four. They reached out to me and said, oh, we're going to be there in LA audition again. Do you want to come in for a checkup? I was like, sure, whatever. So I went in, didn't think much of it. Assumed that was done, right? And then literally 9 months later, I'm pretty sure it was like the end of 2004, I got a call from Amina Kaplan, was her name. She said, hey, it's Amina. I'm the West Coast drum teacher for Blue Man Group. I'm supposed to start training you for your New York callback. Like, what? Like, it was no one from Blue Man Group had contacted me at all. I just assumed it was a done. You know, I was doing other things in LA.
Right.
And she was like, yeah, they didn't tell you? I was like, no, they didn't tell me. So started doing drum lessons with her that they took care of. And then eventually there was they flew me to New York for a 3-day workshop callback thing. Uh-huh. And then from that, I got hired into training. Meanwhile, I'm doing the Sunday company at the Groundlings, which is almost like a full-time job. You're doing a new show every Sunday. And then I left for training. And for training there, you're living in New York. They put you up in an apartment. You get paid. You learn the show. There are 3 of us in training. No one's you're not competing against each other. If they like you and you're right for the part, they'll hire you, whether it's just you or 3 people.
Okay.
And after 4 weeks, they cut one guy, and after 5 weeks, they cut another guy, and then I was the last man standing. And let's see, I did the show in New York for a few months, and they sent me to Toronto. Mm-hmm. I was there for 6 months. The show closed there. I became known as the closer because I would show up in a city and then they would announce that the show was going to close.
Interesting.
So I did Toronto and then got sent to Vegas. Mm-hmm. I went and watched the show in London randomly one night. I was visiting my sister who lived there. Literally watched the show on like a Thursday night. On Friday they announced it was closing. Yeah, seriously, I'm not joking. Like I just was in the audience and then they announced the next day we're closing in a few weeks. Like, oh God, I'm so sorry. So then I was in Vegas. While in Vegas, in the middle of Vegas, I went to Germany and did the show in a small town called Oberhausen for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And then came back to Vegas. And then after being in Vegas for about 3 years, I quit being a full-time Blue Man, moved to New York. But the way it kind of works, and that's one of the things that's great about the job, is as long as, you know, you do it well and you get along with people, they'll always kind of need you. So I moved to New York, and then a few weeks later, they're like, hey, can you go to Chicago a couple weeks and do the show? Sure. So I did that, and then did the show in New York for a little bit here and there. It'd be the kind of thing where they'd say, hey, can you do the show Tuesday night, just one show? Yeah, sure, great. Did some Blue Man gigs and commercials in Brazil. And as far as and then I've done the show all over North America, Canada. I've toured a little bit with the show. And so it's taken me all over. It's been great. I was in Chicago last week doing the show. Before that, I was in Vegas for a short stint. So,
well, I didn't get a call, so
you didn't get a call, and no one really got a call, to be honest with
you.
I
understand.
So don't be offended. My life these days is auditioning a lot, and like I was in Vegas doing a lot of shows, and then when I wasn't doing shows, I was putting myself on tape for auditions. So
I get it. I get the actor's life. Well, the thing that surprises me is that I didn't realize till you mentioned it that we were in LA at the same time. That's interesting because I was taking classes at the Groundlings, and I guess we just didn't cross paths.
Yeah, we didn't.
Don't forget, you were Sunday company. I was just a student.
Well, I wasn't Sunday. It took many years to get to Sunday company. I wasn't Sunday company till like the end of 2005 or something like that. It takes a while. That place, like I don't know what it's like now, but you would take a class, and then if you passed that class, you'd have to wait a year or two to get into the next class.
Who were your instructors? This is off script for anyone watching, but I'm curious, who were your teachers at Groundlings?
Well, let's see. I had Karen Mariyama. I don't know if you know her. I had her like twice. With Sunday Company, she was our director and teacher, and then I had her for a class before that. Oh God, this is a long time ago. Julie Welsh, who's awesome. David John.
I had David John. So
okay.
David John was my level 2.
Great.
I had Cheryl Hines as my level.
Oh, great. 1. Yeah, a lot of people had her.
Amazing.
Never had her.
She was the best ever. Keep going. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's okay. I had Patrick Bristow. Those are my instructors. And in the Sunday company with me, or people like Michaela Watkins. I don't even know her. You would probably recognize her.
I know the name. Yeah. If I saw her, I'd probably.
Fantastic. She did a year on Saturday Night Live, and now she's just on like one show after another. She's fantastic.
Well, kudos to you for sticking to it and graduating through the courses. I think it was in David John's class where I was not invited to go to level 3 or whatever it was called.
Very common. Very common.
Yeah, and I was like, well, forget this. And then I went over to Second City and I took some writing courses. And then Second City had a presence here in Las Vegas with a show at the Flamingo.
Right.
And Vegas is home for me and where I grew up. And I kind of gave up on my dreams of becoming an actor in LA, and I thought, well, I'll come home and study improv, and discovered the school here. So I want to know what that was for you, because I know we eventually met.
Well, I just wanted to, I mean, by that point, when I got to Vegas, I mean, I had been doing improv for a good 12, 13 years. And I loved it, and I wanted to keep doing it. And I didn't, just because I was doing Blue Man Group, didn't want to stop. So I knew Second City was there, so I immediately looked into it. They demanded that I start at level 1. That was a little frustrating. But had I not done level 1, I wouldn't have met some of, people like Johnny Morris and Joyce Maloof and Rit and Robert and Tara. These are people I met in my level 1 class that I'm still very good friends with today. So I'm thankful for that. And then ultimately, I became friends with that's how you and I met. And then I became friends with some of the people that were doing the show, like Shelley Gossman, if you remember her. And we became friends. And I think I went with her to Liz Allen's house for not Thanksgiving, but some type of something or other. And Liz and I met. And then I was in a class with her that she taught, and she's just fantastic. Not just as an improv teacher, but sort of as a life coach / improv teacher.
Agreed. And I remember, well, of course, I took classes with her too. And Liz, for anyone watching that doesn't know, is someone whose husband had work here in Vegas, and she was a huge presence in the improv scene in Chicago, but his work brought her here, so she came and became a part of the Second City machine here in Vegas.
She taught huge names back in, she was in the whole Tina Fey circle back in the day in Chicago, and so we were all very lucky, thankful that her husband Doug had a job in Vegas.
Right.
Somehow she ended up there and, blessing us with her presence, which was great.
Again, I can't say enough about her. I met you, I think, at a party at Robert and Rit's house. I think it was a going away party for Steve and Katie.
Okay.
Right. I think that's maybe when we first crossed paths. But then I saw you perform. You mentioned Joyce. I just saw her like a week ago.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I remember your kind of group being separate from the classmates I was kind of advancing with through the
you were ahead, right? You had already taken, I think, some classes. So our level 1 was just I don't know. And Johnny, who I'd never done anything like that. You know, I remember, and I've told Jai this. I remember first day of class is like level one, and I'm already like, I'm an asshole. I've got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah,
I've been
you
doing it for a
do. Just
while.
kidding.
Yeah, said it so honestly. But at that time, I was like, you know, I don't want to take level one. And like this guy named Johnny Morris introduces himself, and he's like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I work in auto glass. And I remember me being like, oh, God. Like I was in the Sunday company at the Groundling.
Yes.
Now I'm in a class with a guy who works in auto glass. And then Johnny is one of my great friends who I just love dearly. And and he's so funny and so talented. And it was definitely a moment where I was like, you know, however many weeks later, I was like, wow, I am a judgmental, you know, asshole. But yeah, that was the kind of thing. Our group just kind of like, we just had a little click and connected. It was great.
Watching you all team up on stage at the Onyx Theater and Commercial Center and doing a lot of fun stuff where I was like, oh, I want to play with these guys. I don't even know that you and I have ever performed together. Maybe.
I don't know if we have either.
Right. Well, next time you're on a longer trip to Vegas,
I'll let you know.
We have some stuff going on here.
Yeah.
Okay, so improv happens. We have Blue Man Group happening. Yet at some point, your trajectory took you to, is this where you end up in LA? Remind me of what happened next.
Well, I'd been in LA after college for about 5 years, and then left for Blue Man Group.
Right.
And then that was the whole New York, Toronto, Vegas, Germany, Vegas. Then I quit full-time Blue Man, moved to New York to pursue other acting things. And but after 2 years there, I sort of started to realize that most of my connections, I felt like there was more work to be had in LA, and most of my connections were in LA. So after 2 years in New York, I moved back to LA, and it was my second go around in LA. And I knew I told myself, I was like, you got to be more proactive. I was never good at the business, and I'm still not good at the business of being an actor. You know, like out of college, I thought I could show up and like just use my talent and charm and I'd be fine. And it doesn't. Some people get really lucky and it works that way, but you got to work at it. You got to work at the business of it. So I came back and really just kind of hit the ground running. I reached out to people I knew and was like, hey, do you know anyone that's an agent? Do you know, all that kind of stuff. And started being really proactive, and ultimately got one line on the show Mike and Molly, my first TV gig. And then I did another line, and I do like casting director workshops, and I'd meet casting directors, and then they'd bring me in for like one line on something, and I would get it. So I did a couple shows with one line. Then I did an episode of Criminal Minds where I had like 12 lines, maybe 15 lines, a couple scenes. And then it just started, it's sort of how it works. You're just, things kind of ultimately get bigger and better in a dream world, but not always.
Well, and I appreciate hearing that, because I too, as I mentioned before, spent some time in LA, but you say be proactive, and I was very lazy about it. And I think you realized, or having some distance from it, you got back and you're like, okay, these are the steps I need to take.
My first time here, I was 22, 21, and you leave college, and at Northwestern at that point, everyone knew who I was. I was in the Meow, the big sketch comedy group, and I was like the lead in some of the plays. So it wasn't, you get out here, no one knows and no one cares. And it's not so much I was lazy. I was still working. I was doing Groundling stuff and taking classes. I put on a sketch comedy show with a bunch of friends from college. But all that is great, but there is a certain like business side of it where you're selling a product, and the product is me. And I hate it, and it's gross. I don't like doing the business stuff, but I just kind of learned. Second time I went out, I was like, I have to do that. Like if I know a writer on a TV show, I need to reach out to them. And not just as like, I need to use them, but like, hey, I'm going to let them know I'm here, I'm around. If something comes up, great. And that's ultimately what happened. Like that Mike and Molly, the one line, was basically because a good friend of mine from the Groundlings was a writer on the show, and they were looking for one part, and he mentioned my name. didn't mean I got the part, just meant I got an audition. And from the audition, I got the part. But that's how it happened. That wouldn't have happened had I not, been in contact with him. And he's a great friend, regardless of what he's working on. You do have to use the connections you have.
Well, I was going to say, so no matter how much charm and talent and charisma you have, it's all about leveraging your connections.
and luck. I mean, look, there is a lot of luck. Yeah. Look, you kind of have to have a version of all of it, but you can be, like, I always say this, you can be the most brilliant actor and the hardest working actor, but if you don't get, sorry, that the middle finger is the one.
Okay, I can edit it out, but I think
I'll start. This is 1. This is 2. This will be better. So you can be incredibly talented, incredibly hardworking, but if you don't get that little thing of luck in there somewhere, you may never work. So every job I get, no matter how hard I've worked, I feel genuinely lucky to have somehow found myself in a place that led to that job.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because I started to recognize your ascension through your career path when you got cast in, I'm a lover of horror films, Scott Speiser.
I know this is going. Good God.